The improved play of Walker Kessler and Keyonte George can give you a little bit of a vision, a light into how this rebuild works. The light, just really far away still. Next on Locked on Jazz. Bum 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 pow.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
How are you? I am David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you so much for taking the time to make Locked on Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps, also on YouTube, and we have a daily newsletter, Locked on Jazz. It's incredible. You get the national writing of Katie Heindel exclusively on that. You get Mike Schreier every Thursday. You get Josh Lloyd's fantasy tips, and you get something on the Jazz, plus all the links to the most important NBA stories. So go to lockedondaily.com. to get that. Today's show is brought to you in part by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Apologize, there was no show yesterday. I had the weird internet thing. We didn't pay the bill on Monday. And then yesterday, actually, it was kind of a nightmare. Our entire system went down on how we record podcasts for Locked On. So I actually did this show. This is the second time I will have recorded this show. My only big bummer is we did a late game watch. I did a late game watch for you yesterday, and I'll do it again today. And how great Jalen Suggs has been. And he was great last night, even though they lost to Milwaukee. All right, let's get to it. Here's today's show. We'll do a late game watch. I'm still going to do it. The reason we do late game watch, I watched the final 7 to 9 minutes of every close game in the NBA, is actually, I think it's a precursor of what's going to happen coming up. And it tells you a little bit, and that's my vision to tell you that of what's coming. Like, you can see a lot out of teams. So the fact that, some of this is now 4 days old, I still think is relevant. And then, but the bigger one is we want to touch about Isaiah Collier and going off in the G League, update you on Cody Williams. But I want to talk about how I think I see a vision here, or I see for the first time a little bit of a light. Now, if that light is in a tunnel and it's a train and it's coming at you, it's super far away. But the play of Walker Kessler and Keyonte George to me is beginning to let me say, like, oh, I get how this might work. I get how this whole rebuild thing happens. And the first part of that is that I think poor Keyonte George and Walker Kessler, because we've been so eager for the next Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, that's kind of what we've been looking at them for. And it's not a realistic ask on our part. And it's not, if you actually look at draft history, it's totally unrealistic. And I'll touch on that. But let me start first with just what I see out of Keyonte George and Walker Kessler right now, third and second year players, is viable NBA rotation players. And I'm not sure I knew that. Walker's second year was a step back, and you kind of wondered where it was going to go. But I think now if you look at him, Mitchell Robinson, Robert Williams, some of these guys, Goga Bukazi playing great in Orlando after being released last year. I mean, there's just a ton of centers in this league. Walker's a legitimate 22-minute-a-night center with on some nights going to be 30. And maybe could start to have a defensive anchor. He's really playing great. Maybe that's mundane to you because we're shooting for, in the rebuild, if you're going to win the championship that Ryan and Danny and Justin talk about, you're going to get a top 10 player, a top 20 player, and a top 50 player. That's how you got to do it. What I see out of Walker and Keyonte are not a top 10 player, a not top 20 player, a not top 50 player, but pieces that go around the 10, the 20, and the 50. And maybe that's not what you had hoped for. It's probably what we should have expected. I'll explain that in a minute. But let me stay on the improvement of the two players. So Walker's strength looks much better. His enjoyment looks much better. His engagement looks much better. His defensive impact is undeniable. His rebounding is superb. The game is totally different. The eye check to me is the game is totally different when he's on the floor. The minute he leaves the floor, everyone just goes straight to the rim against us. And the minute he's on the floor, they don't. They still get there because our transition defense isn't great and the data doesn't show it as you'd be surprised. Like I always go to Cleaning the Glass, which has these great numbers, and expect to see that if I pull up Walker on off, the teams shoot at the rim a million times less against us than Walker's on the floor and off. It actually doesn't show up. The reason, it's 4%. It's good. Like teams shoot 4% less when Walker's on the floor at the rim than when he's on the floor. It's 88th percentile. I expect it to be like 98th percentile. But that's fine. It's partially because we allow so much in transition. But we're just, we're much better defensively when Walker's on the floor. It's undeniable. And that's great. That's exactly what he's supposed to do, and it's going to keep getting better. For Keyonte, the recent stretch of games, he's actually first off, he's shooting it well. Like he's, I think, 46-38, like in the last 10, 12 games. That's great. That's an NBA player. The 40-33 is not an NBA player. 40% field goal and 33% three-point range. But the other stuff we're seeing out of him is I'm seeing a patience in which he plays the game, understanding how to let a 30-minute game come to him. His defense against Portland was fabulous. His off-court work is terrific. His mentality of wanting to get better is terrific. His maturity is great. So you can see both these guys becoming NBA rotation players. Now, you may be asking yourself, like, well, wait a second. That's not what I wanted out of him. Okay, it's probably what we should have expected. I think sometimes we forget that Keyonte was drafted 16th. And Walker was drafted 22nd. From 2007 to 2020. Okay, so I don't have the 2021 draft done yet because I just don't think the players are old enough. Picks 16 through 20. Okay. Picks 16 through 20 have yielded one player in the top 50 in the NBA. One. 13 years of drafts, one player in the top 50. Unfair for us to expect Keyonte to be the second. Be nice, but I don't think that's what we should be asking. Picks 21 through 25 have yielded one player in the top 50. Walker's 22nd pick. They yielded an actual top 20 player in 2020. But so when I say I see a light, what I see is possibility that Walker and Keyonte could be pieces of a long-term puzzle, but not as those guys. Frankly, the expectation that a 16th pick and a 22nd pick would ever be those guys, I just showed you, was really kind of nuts. Right? Where do you get those guys? You get them in the top of the draft. Right? Over the last 2007 to 2020, in my estimations, these are all estimations, there have been 11 MVP candidates that have been drafted in that time period. Of those 11, 7 of the 11 were taken in the top 4 picks. In my estimations, there's been 17 top 20 players. I know that's funny. It's separate than the MVPs, so that comes out. 17 top 20 players. 7 of the top 20 players were taken in the top 3 picks, 9 of them taken in the top 5. I probably need to expand this out, but in my estimations, 11, 18, 20 top 50 players have been taken. 8 of the 20 were taken in the top 50 or top 5. 11 of them were taken in the top 7. 16 of them were taken in the top 10. 16 of the 19 top 50 players were taken in the top 10. There's actually a few more. I missed some numbers in there, but you got the gist. So Keyonte and Walker, to me, I see a light. But here's the light. And we'll talk about this coming up. The light, and when does it actually happen, is that Keyonte and Walker, and maybe Lowry as a top 50, are coupled with our pick next year, who eventually becomes the top 10 or top 20. And the pick after that, who eventually becomes the top 10 or the top 20. and maybe the pick after that in case we don't hit on one of the first two picks because you don't go 100%. And then they mature out like Jayson Tatum, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and Jaylen Brown, along with a mature Walker, Kessler, and Keyonte George. I'll explain, I'll give the years, and I'll break it down next on Locked on Jazz. Today's edition of Locked on Jazz is brought to you by Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street, also located in Logan and in Linden. The Murdochs have been in Utah for over 80 years. The Hyundai is a fabulous car. I've bought 3 of them. I'm driving the new Santa Fe right now. It is just terrific. It's the new model, totally solid ride, feels powerful going up the canyon. I just had the Palisade before that. That was just elegant, absolutely fabulous. And you've got the Tucson and the Kona wrapping up the SUV lineup. The Elantra and the Sonata are the sedans, and of course the Ioniq 5 and 6, which have won all the awards. If you're going to look for a car right now, take a look at the Hyundais. You'll see for the dollar, for the bells, the whistles, you get the best value you possibly can. And I want to make sure you get a VIP experience. So email me first at dlock09@gmail.com. That's dlock09@gmail.com, and I'll set you up with your VIP experience. Today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NBA or the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and the official sportsbook of Locked On, because right now new customers can bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win a $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Every moment more with FanDuel.com, the official sportsbook partner of Locked On, as well as the NFL. And if you're going to play the NBA, by the way, I really thought the Mavericks were going to win last night. Knicks are an 8.5 favorite over Atlanta, and the Rockets are a 2-point favorite against the Warriors. And then NBA action follows. I think the rest of it. Is there just a regular NBA game today too? Do they have to play a third game today? No, that's all coming the next day. Detroit, Boston, Toronto, Miami, and Sacramento. Okay. All right, that's all up for you. NBA Cup, Oklahoma City is the odds-on favorite still to win the Cup. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. We do have the daily newsletter for you, and I'm very excited for you. Go check it out at lockedondaily.com. All right. Let's go to Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown, because that is clearly the model. You draft 2 guys in the top 3 in back-to-back years, and then they become stars. And now Jaylen Brown is a top 20 player in the NBA, and Jayson Tatum's a top 10. And you, along with a loaded roster of players, you win a title. Jaylen Brown was drafted in the 2016-17 season. Okay? And then in 17-18, they draft Jayson Tatum, and that's the Isaiah Thomas year. Or excuse me, the first one's the Isaiah Thomas year. So Jaylen Brown in his first year on that team is with Isaiah Thomas when Isaiah Thomas goes nuts. And Jaylen Brown, by the way, plays the 8th most amount of minutes of any player on that team in his rookie year. Not thrust out there like we did to Keyonte or anyone. But this is not about Keyonte and Walker being the exact opposite here. My point is that Keyonte George and Walker Kessler are progressing great as rotation players in the NBA, which is a win for where they were picked. And if we're going to go get our stars, they're coming in the upcoming drafts. And they're still going to be a ways out. So Jaylen Brown plays 18 minutes a night. And the next year they go and get Tatum. And Boston's unique because they're going to the conference finals while doing this because they've added Kyrie and they still have Gordon Hayward and they have Al Horford. Gordon, I think, misses this season, but they're loaded up. The 18-19 season, which is now Jaylen Brown's 3rd year and Jayson Tatum's 2nd, Jayson Tatum becomes the number 2 guy behind Kyrie. Jaylen Brown is still playing the 7th most amount of minutes on that team that's got Marcus Smart and some other players. They go to the playoffs. And it's not until, if you push ahead, till the 2021 season when they finally turn the team over to Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Jayson Tatum plays 36 minutes and Jaylen Brown plays 35, and Marcus Smart, and they have Kemba Walker at that point. Gordon Hayward's gone. And they both are all-stars and they're great, but that's the year they finally turn it over to the 2 stars, which is the 2020-21 season. And then it's the next year in the 21-22 season when they go to the NBA Finals and lose to the Warriors. But that's Jaylen Brown's 6th season and Jayson Tatum's 5th. So if we use that model, that the player we draft in the 24 draft will be in his, if all goes well, in his 6th season, and the player we draft, in the 25 draft, and the player we draft in the 26 draft, who maybe just committed to BYU, will be in his 5th season, then we're talking the 31-32 NBA season. Yeah. To some extent, we're talking because 25-26 is the first year for our next kid. And if he's in his 6th year, that's the 31-32 season. And the first year for the next one is 26-27. And his 5th year is they turn the team over the year prior. In the 1920 season, when it's their 3rd and 4th years in the league, Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown are kind of the guys with Gordon Hayward. So you could back it up a little bit. And they make the Eastern Conference Finals that year, but that team still has Gordon Hayward and it has Kemba Walker and has Marcus Smart. Those are their two. Jayson Tatum finishes top 10, I think, MVP that year. So you could back it up a little bit. That's their conference finals run, which would then be our 29-30 season. And then you have Keyonte George playing the role of Marcus Smart and Walker Kessler playing the role of some center on those teams. They didn't have the exact comparable player. But so they click in 29-30 with those pieces. You put something around them in 1920, and then it's really, they explode in years 6 and 7. But they hit in the Eastern Conference Finals in 29, in what would be equivalent to our 29-30 year. Right? That's they lose to the Miami Heat. It's Jaylen Brown's 4th year. It's Jayson Tatum's 3rd year. And that was gone perfectly. The best example right now, who was not a top pick, so it feels like he's something else, is Shea, who was the 11th pick of the draft. And if we look at Shea explodes into the MVP world in what was his 5th year in the NBA as the top 5 pick, and his 6th year in the last year. So that's 5 and 6 years. Tatum and Brown did it in 3 and 4 years. But I can see the light. It's just super far away, which is fine. Which, to the point of this, then, what is your point? My point is twofold. My point is, one, we have a long way to go still. My point, two, is let's stop asking Keyonte and Walker to be the pieces, the top 10 and top 20 pieces. I don't think that's a realistic, fair expectation. And 3, this is no fun. But if it goes well, and I can see it, like excitingly, I can see, you add this piece next year in the 25 draft, and then that player is probably in his 3rd year in the 29-30 season is kind of clicking in, and you add another piece, and they're clicking in, and those are our picks. Like, stop having Cleveland and Minnesota hope and pray, because even if Cleveland and Minnesota or the Lakers pick down the road clicks, we're 3 and 4 years out from when that pick starts to break through. If we're in a point, our goal with those picks should be that we've built this thing, it's about ready to go, and then we add some really good young piece that's cheap at that point, and that pushes us over the edge. That would be the goal. But we're talking drafting a kid in 25 and his 4th year being the 29-30 year and kind of clicking in, right? Drafting a kid in 26 and having his 4th year, the 30-31 year, click in. That's kind of what we're talking. And that's interesting about that is by the 30-31 year, well, Keyonte's a 26-year-old solid pro. Walker's a 27-year-old solid pro that complement these guys beautifully. So then my next point on that is, let's give Walker and Keyonte and Bryce, who may be a shooter that stays with us, and maybe Taylor Hendricks comes back from his injury, and we actually have some air space for him to get better and recover. And the fact that we've lost a year or two out of this is a bummer, but not as catastrophic as it feels. And let Cody and Isaiah do their thing. And let's let them do 20-minute blocks, 20-game blocks, 10-game blocks. Let's look at them instead of Keyonte turned it over 7 times tonight, he sucks. No. Like pieces of the puzzle slowly being put together. It's a long route out. But I honestly can see that happening. That's where we're going. We get one of these pieces this year with a top 4 or 5 pick, and you got a chance. You get another one the next year with a top 4 or 5 pick. And frankly, you probably got to get another one the next year. You know that our starting lineup next year is Keyonte George, some kid we just drafted, Walker Kessler. I don't know. And the next year, it's the 2 kids we've drafted, Keyonte George, Walker Kessler, and some piece of the puzzle. But that's my guess, and I see it, and I think it's great. All right, Isaiah Collier went bonkers in the G League the other day. Isaiah Collier, who had hit 4 threes in NBA in like 27 attempts, went 5 of 6 from 3 and walked up on the very first play of the game, crossed over and pulled and hit. He did get into his bag a ton. He was bouncing with the dribble and doing all this stuff, which is not entirely how you're going to have him play in the NBA. But it was pretty great to see. He went 15 of 18 from the field. He had a beautiful push-ahead pass. He crossed over into 3. He hit a midi. He looked great. Super awesome to see and a great way to use the G League. Cody Williams has kind of had 5 games. His first 2 were a little rough shooting-wise and stuff and didn't finish one of them. And then his third game was good. And then his 4th game was incredible. And it had like 5 steals and 3 blocks. And that was really great. And then last night he had 0 blocks and 0 steals, or 2 nights ago, 0 blocks, 0 steals, went 2 of 14 and 0 of 7 from 3. I will say the thing on Cody that I'm excited to see is these 14 shot attempts. He just didn't look anything like someone who's going to take 14 shot attempts when we were watching him for the Jazz. So that's great to see. All right, late game watch. A rising star, which would have been a much better tease yesterday than today. A weird review, some strange coaching, and a team that's supposed to be really good that when I watch them late really worries me. That's all next on Locked On Jazz. It's time for you to cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at Mint Mobile. MintMobile.com/LockedOnNBA will get it done for you. It is the grand surprise that you get all the time from the major mobile companies, the big wireless providers. You never see what you see, what you never is never what you get. Somewhere between the store and your first month's bill, the price you thought you were paying magically skyrockets. With Mint Mobile, you never have to worry about the gotchas ever again. Mint Mobile says $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, and they mean it. So say bye-bye to overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you from the premium wireless plans starting at just $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data, unlimited talk, text delivered on the largest 5G network. Use your phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number with you along with all your existing contacts. So right now, new customers offer your new 3-month plan, premium wireless, for just $15 a month. Go to mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. Get your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. $45 upfront payment requires equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower than 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plans. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. Today's show is also brought to you by Game Time. That's the official ticketing app of Locked On. It's the official ticketing app for anything you want, whether it's a concert, a theater, sporting event, something for the holidays, looking for the ultimate gift. Here it is. Do it with Game Time. Game Time Picks is a curation that makes it easy for you to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever it might be, and makes it so you do not have to work through the fluff of thousands of tickets and different deals in different spots. It gives you the best deals and the best seats. It knows that you are interested in. Toggle all pricing in feature on, and you don't have any surprises at checkout. You get seat views, lowest price guarantee, and game time ticket coverage, purchase coverage, most flexible customer service policy in the industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account and redeem a code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, let's do some late game watch. This is where I watch the final 9 minutes of a game. I do it, helps play-by-play, but I also do it because I think it gives a great indicator on what's happening. So this is funny. Last night, this was what I had for you down before the game last night. So I had the Magic Suns game, and the Magic are playing without Wagner and without Banchero, and they did this last night against the Bucks, and I have the lake. I'll add it. Their guard pressure is just amazing. And with Anthony Black, Jalen Suggs, their guard placement. And what was interesting is in last night's game, Anthony Black picks up Dame Lillard high at the end with high game at about a 40-foot pickup point. And Dame is so smart to know, like, if I become stagnant here at any point in time, I'm dead. This is where Will Hardy's talking about Keyonte with the on-ramp. Like, you got to come across the half court with juice because the half court becomes the defender's friend the minute you cross it if you stop. And Dame just burst by him for the game-winning layup. And my Orlando defense was getting set. Nobody saw it. Nobody rotated. And Gogo Bakazi went out to the corner for Bobby Portis instead of stopping at the rim. And it was just Dame hit the step back three and hit the drive late, which were just both incredible money plays. And then he actually defended fine on Jalen Suggs late. So tip of the hat to Dame last night, but also it was interesting because one of the big things in the Magic Suns game where the Suns didn't really have a point guard, that guard pressure caused them so many problems. And Booker and Beal were unimpressive late in that Suns game. And the Suns were just super sloppy, which was really surprising me. And the other note I had in that one was that Jalen Suggs is taking ownership of this team and was a star in that game against Phoenix and is becoming the player that kind of everyone hoped he'd be. I loved Jalen Suggs. I want us to trade every pick in the world for Jalen Suggs. Orlando clearly was not willing for a reason. And Suggs was, again, great last night. So Jalen Suggs is a rising star in this stretch without Wagner and Banchero. Will be interesting for Orlando because Suggs is playing great. He's still not crazy efficient, but he is playing so well and may vault them. Wolves Warriors, this was from like 3 nights ago. Ant was awful. And it really felt as though, like, if I give the ball up, I'm not getting it back. And I have Julius Randle over there who's going to shoot. And Ant took 5 or 6 of the worst shots you could imagine. That dynamic just still feels really messed up. The other one is they have no floor spacing. And I've talked about this before. Mike Conley did not finish this game. They finished with Nickeil Alexander-Walker instead of Mike Conley, which is newsworthy. And the other one that just jumps out is just, Ant's playing high pick and roll with Rudy. And the floor is spaced with McDaniel, Randall, and Alexander-Walker. That's just not going to do it. And then the key play of the game, they come out of a timeout, and Chris Finch's play, this is the second time I've seen this, is a flare screen to Nickeil Alexander-Walker for 3. So that's their best shooter. Whoa. I love Nickeil. He's playing great. Like, Minnesota got a steal in him from what he is today than what he was for us. It's great for Minnesota, but that is not who you should be going to with like a minute and a half left in a game for your guaranteed 3. And so last night, or in that game, Minnesota ran that same flare screen. He comes off a Gobert flare. Ant has the ball. You're supposed to flare it out to him. They guard it well. And then, so Rudy's now kind of in no man's land. So Rudy now has to run back to the basket. And he literally just drags Draymond right into the middle of the key where Anthony Edwards drives and runs right into him. And you can just kind of feel the tension about that and everything going on there. The Warriors were not impressive at all late. Steph missed a bunch of shots. They didn't know where they were going with the ball. Kuminga was out there and not doing much. Gary Payton Jr. is playing because he's got to guard Ant. They have a lot of pieces, but none of them are right there. Big play of the night. They set a back screen on Rudy. Draymond came around, packed it. Draymond getting revenge on Rudy was everything he wanted. Bucks against the Nets was interesting in 2 things. You're beginning to see, you saw it last night, the Bucks are now beginning to run Giannis, Dame pick and rolls, which Doc had not done, which Adrian Griffin hadn't done, which they didn't want to do, which actually Doc said to us in a press conference this year that they didn't want to do it, but we're beginning to see them run Dame, Giannis pick and rolls, and now Middleton's back, and so Middleton is mixed into that as well. So you're beginning to see the structure of how they're going to close games And even Doc, in our interview with him this year when we were in Milwaukee, I asked him about it. He's like, yeah, that's supposed to have Middleton involved in it. And it's a 3-man game all the way back from his days in Boston with Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen. And that's where that play is built out of. And we're seeing that from Milwaukee. Portis was insane in that game. Interesting, Jordy Fernandez, the new head coach of Brooklyn, didn't go after Dame at all. They have Dennis Schroeder and they have Cam Johnson. They didn't pigeon hunt at all in that game, going after one player or AJ Green, who was on the floor. So that really surprised me. There was a review in this game in which Brooklyn goes up, and I can't remember who it was for Brooklyn, but call it Dorian Finney-Smith or somebody of that nature, goes up, and Isaiah Jackson, who's now closing games for Milwaukee as their defensive fifth guy instead of Gary Trent, goes up, blocks the shot, and blocks the shot up on the rim. Incredible block. He's called for a foul. It's not they're going to review the foul, but Cam Johnson grabs the rebound and in one motion puts it up and in. So Doc Rivers challenges it because of the fact that he doesn't think it's a block. He thought it was a block shot, not a foul. He wins the challenge, but imminent possession meant that Cam Johnson got the ball and in one motion put it up. So they count the basket for Brooklyn, even though Milwaukee won the challenge. Kind of crazy. By the way, then I watched the Hornets Pacers game. In that game, there was an interesting play where Benedict Mathurin drives the basket and looks like it's a blocking foul. They challenge it. And the ruling was that because Mathurin had not fully gathered yet, the defender only has to be in he owns his area. It doesn't have to be set. If he's gathered into a shot, then the defender has to be set. But if he's not gathered all the way, then he's driving into a defender who owns the area, and it was called an offensive foul, which I didn't know on that one. On the Hornets-Pacers game, this one was disturbing to me about the Pacers in that, well, one, the Hornets, Charles Lee, their head coach, they're so injured. He played nobody bigger than 6'5" for the final 5 minutes of the game. Isaiah Wong, who was signed to the Salt Lake Stars, was finishing this game for them. TJ McConnell killed him. Everyone scored on every possession in this game. There was no defense. It was interesting to me, though, that Rick Carlisle took Miles Turner out of the game and tried to play small with the Hornets at 6'5". And then Indiana just couldn't get stops. Halliburton didn't look right. It's a terrible loss by Indiana. They should never lose that game. And it was just kind of eye-opening that they did lose that game to me. All right, those were kind of my late game watches. Big takeaways, the Wolves just still don't look comfortable. Milwaukee is coming together, beginning to get their understanding of who they are, how they're going to close games. Jalen Suggs, rising star, which he proved last night. And the Pacers really did look like a below 500 team, which was super surprising to me. All right, that's kind of the takeaways there. We'll keep an eye out on those things. Fun one last night. Oklahoma City, I couldn't believe they shut down Dallas's offense last night. Dallas's offense, I think, had 100 offensive rating through 3 quarters last night. Incredible. Big-time statement. Big-time statement by OKC. Because I think Dallas, to me, if I had to pick a Western Conference finalist team going into last night, I would have taken Dallas to be back in the NBA Finals against Boston. That was my pick. Still probably is, but they took Luka completely out of it. Couldn't stop Shea. I am worried about Dallas from late game watch when they have Clay, Kyrie, and Luka on the floor. Like, how are they guarding anyone? And I thought their offense might overcome it. And last night put some doubt in that. Thanks so much for tuning in. Right now, we'll send you
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily.
I did the wrong one. Check on if you're on audio, check out Locked On NBA for the after game recap every single night at Locked On NBA on audio. Have a great one.